Hello, welcome to Unbelievable Tales.
Some meetings feel like fate wearing a flannel jacket and holding a stick with a marshmallow. Jason Miller wasn't expecting company when he lit the fire that night, just a quiet moment with his daughter, a break from the weight of their world. But then she appeared, all sharp eyes and tired elegance, asking to share the flame. He didn't recognize her. He didn't know she remembered him. He couldn't have imagined how this evening, this woman, would upend the life he'd so carefully kept small. What began as a simple campfire talk would uncover a history neither of them had finished writing and a future that might finally make sense. Before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. The marshmallows had started to catch fire. Jason exhaled through his nose and blew out the flames before handing the golden one to Sophie. She accepted it with a sticky grin and wedged it between graham crackers like she'd done it 100 times, though they'd only started this routine 2 weeks ago when the weather turned warm enough to sleep outside without waking up shivering. Too crunchy, she mumbled through the bite. Jason smiled, brushing ash off his flannel. That's the sugar talking. Can we do another one? You've already had two. Please, Daddy. One for her. Jason turned toward the woman sitting on the log across from them. She hadn't said much since joining them, just smiled at Sophie and held her hands near the fire like she was trying to remember how warmth worked. She looked out of place in the forest, jeans too clean, boots too new, a jacket that cost more than Jason's truck. And yet something about her didn't feel fake. Not like the tourists who drifted into the campgrounds every spring, taking selfies beside the pine trees and leaving behind beer cans and complaints. This woman hadn't asked for anything. Just walked up, calm and soft-spoken, and asked if she could warm her hands. She hadn't even told them her name yet. Jason cleared his throat. She okay with a marshmallow? The woman looked up. Her eyes, blue-gray, sharp, studied him for a beat too long. Then she nodded. One, she said, voice low and smooth. If it's not too much trouble. Sophie clapped. Extra toasty. Jason chuckled under his breath and reached for another skewer. You heard the boss. The fire popped. Shadows danced against the tree trunks around them, and somewhere deeper in the woods an owl called out, long and hollow. Jason kept his focus on the marshmallow, slow rotation, even browning, but he could feel her eyes on him again. You camp out here often? She asked. Just since the weather turned. Is it temporary? Jason didn't answer right away. The marshmallow was almost perfect. He handed it to her, still steaming, and wiped his fingers on his jeans. We move around, he said simply. But Sophie likes it here. I do. Sophie beamed, chocolate on her cheek. There's a deer that comes sometimes. I named her Lucy. Of course you did, Jason muttered, but he smiled. The woman bit into the S more carefully, like someone not used to messes. Her lips curved around the first bite, and for a moment she looked younger. Lighter. That's good, she admitted. Jason nodded. Nature's 5-star dessert. They sat in quiet after that. The fire crackled. Sophie leaned against Jason's arm, yawning, eyes heavy. The woman watched them, or maybe just listened. Jason had seen a lot of people pass through these woods, but something about her silence felt full, not awkward. Like she was waiting for something but didn't want to rush it. Eventually she stood. Thank you. For the fire. And the marshmallow. Jason rose too, instinct more than courtesy. No trouble. Be careful walking back. Trails uneven after dark. I'll manage. She hesitated. Then it was nice to meet you. Both of you. You too, miss, he trailed off. She paused. Liv? Then she turned and walked into the trees, flashlight beam flickering ahead of her. Jason stood there a minute longer, watching the dark where she'd gone. Daddy, Sophie murmured, tugging his sleeve. Are we moving tomorrow? He knelt beside her, wrapping her in the blanket they shared. Not yet, Peanut. We've got a few days left. And maybe, just maybe, something more than that. The next morning, he almost convinced himself he'd imagined her. Liv, the woman with CEO posture and campfire eyes. But the marshmallow wrapper was still near the fire pit, and Sophie asked if the pretty lady would come back today. Jason shrugged, said probably not. People came and went. Then came the knock at the ranger station. He'd left Sophie drawing unicorns in the dirt while he checked on the tools. The old ranger let him use the shed for basic repairs in exchange for odd jobs and a promise not to cause trouble. Jason was tightening a hinge when the door creaked open, and there she was. Liv, only now she wasn't in jeans and boots. She wore slacks, a blazer, a visitor's badge, and in her hand a manila folder. Jason Miller, she asked too formally. He straightened, frowning. Yeah, you're. She smiled, the same smile from the fire, only colder. Olivia Hart, we met last night. He blinked. Hart, he repeated, as in Hart and Feldman Properties. Something cracked behind his ribs. We're surveying the land for development, she added. I'm here about the bid on this campground. Jason's throat dried. You're buying this place? Considering it. He stared. You knew last night, and you didn't say anything. I wasn't here last night in any official capacity, she said. Just needed some air. You fed my kid a marshmallow, he muttered. Then showed up in a suit. She almost smiled again, but didn't. I didn't know you were still here. Jason's stomach twisted. Still. You know me. I did, she said softly. A long time ago. He looked at her harder now, past the polish, past the posture. Something familiar in the set of her jaw. The way she stood like she was always bracing for impact. Wait a minute, he said. Liv, from Westport? She nodded. No way. He let out a breathless laugh. You were going to law school? I did, she said. And now you're a developer? CEO. He let that sink in. She didn't flinch. Just waited. You gonna evict us today, or is that next week? Her voice dropped. I didn't know you were here when we started the acquisition. But now you do. She looked away. I'm not here to evict anyone. Yet. Their eyes met, and something old passed between them, something neither was ready to name. I just wanted to talk, she said. And maybe ask about Sophie. His hands clenched. Why? Liv hesitated. Because she reminds me of someone. Jason stepped back, defensive. She's none of your business. Maybe not, she said. But you were mine. Once. He didn't answer. Couldn't. Not with the past pressing down on his chest like a weight he'd forgotten how to carry. I'm not here to take anything from you, Jason, she said, voice quieter now. But I'm not walking away either. She set the folder on the workbench and turned to go. Read it, she added, before you decide what I am. And then she was gone. Jason stared at the folder, at the name printed across the top. Miller Campground Redevelopment Proposal, Olivia Hart. The edges of his world started to shift again. The folder stayed on the bench for hours. Jason didn't touch it. He finished fixing the hinge, wiped down the counter, even helped the ranger sort cables, anything to avoid opening that manila flap. But when Sophie curled up beside him that evening, asking if the pretty lady had gone home, he found himself staring at it again. He waited until she was asleep, soft breaths tangled in the hem of his shirt, and only then did he crack it open. Inside, maps, timelines, financials, letters of intent. Olivia's name signed at the bottom of nearly every page, and a red-stamped proposal stating that the campground would be cleared, restructured, and replaced by a luxury eco-retreat. With cabins, tennis courts, private docks. His jaw clenched. They always called it sustainable. Always called it progress. But Jason had seen enough progress to know it rarely left space for people like him. Still, there was a note tucked at the back. Not typed. Not official. Handwritten. I didn't know it was you. If I had, things might have been different. Maybe they still can be. Live. He folded the page and shoved it deep into his jacket pocket, where it felt like it weighed more than the folder itself. The next day, she was there again. Not in heels this time, hiking boots and a soft sweatshirt. hair pulled back like it used to be when they were young and broke and used to laugh at rich people's brunch menus. Sophie spotted her first. Liv, you came back. Jason stiffened. Liv crouched to Sophie's height. You still making unicorn pictures? I made one with glitter, but Daddy said glitter is the devil. Jason coughed. It gets everywhere. Liv stood, meeting his gaze. Can we walk? He didn't want to, but he nodded. They trailed off the main path, into the tall grass where wildflowers fought for space among fallen logs and weeds. Jason kept his arms crossed, jaw set. Liv walked slowly, deliberately. You think I came here to hurt you, she said. I think you came here to finish a job. That it turned personal by accident. I came here to breathe. He glanced sideways. Not a lot of CEOs slumming it in flannel by the fire. She winced. You're angry. I'm tired. There's a difference. They stopped near the edge of a shallow stream. Dragonflies buzzed over the water. Liv looked down at her reflection, then at his. I didn't know you had a daughter. You didn't know a lot of things. She nodded. That's true. The silence stretched again. She's 4, almost 5. Her throat moved like she was swallowing something sharp. What's her mom like? Jason's mouth pressed into a thin line. She's gone, he said. Didn't want the life that came with being broke and raising a kid in borrowed tents. I'm sorry. No need. He picked up a rock and skipped it across the stream. Sophie's better off. Liv crouched, trailing her fingers through the water. You always wanted to build things. You still do. Built us a life. Best I could. She looked up. Do you hate me? He exhaled hard through his nose. I don't know you. That made her flinch. But she didn't argue, didn't cry, just nodded again and stood. I'm not here to erase your life, Jason. I'm just trying to understand where ours stopped. You stopped it. You left. He turned to her. I left because you had a future and I didn't want to be the reason you missed it. Maybe you were the only part of the future I wanted. The words hung in the air like something alive. Jason looked away first. Then why didn't you come back? She opened her mouth, closed it. I was scared, she admitted, of what you'd become, of what I had become. And now, I'm still scared. He ran a hand down his face, worn and heavy. I can't lose this place, Liv. It's not much, but it's ours. Hers. We've got a rhythm. She nodded slowly. Let me show you something. That night she returned, not alone this time. She brought blueprints, alternatives, a plan that kept the northern grove untouched, the fire pits where they were, even proposals for hiring from the local area, including residents. Including him. Jason scanned the sketches under a battery lantern, jaw tight. You want me to believe this wasn't your plan all along? It wasn't. And now you want to hire me? I want to rebuild something we both lost. He closed the folder with a snap. I don't need saving, Olivia. She stepped back. I know. But her voice wavered just enough that he knew. She wasn't offering rescue. She was asking for a place. He didn't answer. Not yet. But Sophie tugged at his sleeve, looking up at her. Are you staying for stories? Liv glanced at Jason. He said nothing, but he didn't say no, so she sat. Again. And when the fire cracked and Sophie fell asleep against her side this time, Jason watched them both, chest full of noise and memory. He didn't trust her, but he couldn't stop looking at her either. And that scared him more than the folder ever could. The morning after, Jason woke before sunrise. Sophie still curled beneath their blanket, clutching her stuffed fox, hair wild from sleep. The air was cool, touched with the smell of pine and ash. Birds were just beginning their chatter when he stepped outside the tent, rubbing the back of his neck. She was already there. Olivia sat on the same log by the fire pit, hands wrapped around a chipped enamel mug Jason recognized as one of his spares. She looked up as he approached but didn't speak. He stood across from her, arms crossed. "You sleep at all?" "Not much. Camping not your thing anymore?" "It was never really my thing," she said softly, "until you." Jason didn't answer. He watched a squirrel dart along a branch, his jaw tightening against the sudden thrum in his chest. "I keep thinking," she added, "about the last time I saw you." He looked down. "You were standing at that train station," she said, "wearing that old army jacket. You didn't even say goodbye. You were crying. Because I loved you. You were leaving. Because you pushed me away." He sank onto the opposite log, staring at the dying embers. "I was 23, Liv. Working 3 jobs, couldn't afford rent, much less a future. I didn't care. I did. Because I knew you'd hate me for dragging you down. I would have stayed. But I wouldn't have forgiven myself." The silence between them was different now, heavier. She set the mug down, fingers trembling slightly. "I looked for you once," she said. "Years ago. After my dad died." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Why then?" "Because he always said I'd regret walking away from the real thing. And I thought maybe he was right." "Maybe?" "I found your name," she whispered. "But you'd already moved again." He nodded slowly. "Kept moving. Never found anywhere I liked enough to stay. And now?" He glanced at the tent, at the small body curled inside. "Now I stay for her." Olivia's voice cracked just a little. "She's beautiful. She's mine." There was no anger in it. Just truth. "I'm not asking for anything," she said. "But I want to help. Not as a developer. As me." "Would you?" he asked. "The girl with ink on her fingers and college books in her arms? Or the woman in heels holding blueprints that erase people?" She didn't flinch. "Both." He ran a hand over his face. "I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to decide today. But I do have to decide." She stood slowly, brushing pine needles off her pants. "I'll be in town. For a week. If you want to talk." He said nothing. "Tell Sophie I said thank you," she added. "For the story last night." Then she was gone. Again. The next few days moved like breath through cracked glass, there, but fragile. Jason tried to keep busy. Repaired a fence near the ranger's shack. Took Sophie for walks. Helped her build a rock castle by the lake. But everywhere he turned, Olivia's presence clung like dew. Sophie asked about her often. "Will Liv come back?" "I don't know. She listens really good." "She does. She smells like peaches." Jason blinked. "That right?" Sophie nodded. "Like the shampoo you said was too fancy." He half laughed. "Maybe she is too fancy. But she sat in dirt. Real dirt." Jason stared out across the lake, something tight in his chest. "Yeah, I saw that." The next afternoon, he drove into town. Not to find her. Or so he told himself. He needed supplies. Batteries. Rope. Cereal. But he parked a little closer to the center. Walked past the bakery where the air always smelled like cinnamon and flour. Past the bookstore they used to visit before things fell apart. And there she was, through the cafe window, sitting alone with a black notebook and a half-empty cup, looking the same and not the same at all. He almost kept walking, but Sophie's voice echoed in his head, "She listens really good." So he stepped inside. The bell above the door jingled. She didn't look up until he was standing at her table. "Hey," he said. "Hey," she echoed, surprised. "Got time." "I've got time." He sat. The waitress brought him coffee. He didn't touch it. "I read the rest of the plans," he said. She nodded. "And? You weren't lying." "No." "But that doesn't make it easy." "No," she said again. "It doesn't." He exhaled slowly. "I don't want Sophie growing up thinking we're always seconds from losing everything. I don't want her growing up thinking people don't come back." Their eyes met. "She asks about you every morning." I think about her every night. He looked down at the table. You said once you looked for me. I did. Did you wish you hadn't? No, Olivia said. I just wish I'd tried harder. Jason's fingers brushed the rim of his cup. She needs people who stay. I don't plan on running. I don't plan on trusting easy. I wouldn't want you to. The coffee steamed between them, and somehow, without deciding, they sat in silence that didn't hurt anymore. Later, when he opened the door to leave, she touched his arm. Jason, he turned. I never stopped, she said. Stopped what? She looked him dead in the eye. Hoping I'd see you again. He didn't reply, but he didn't walk away either. That night, back at the campground, he found Sophie sketching a new picture. For stick figures this time. One of them taller. One with long brown hair. Jason knelt beside her. Who's that? He asked. She smiled. Us. All of us. I thought maybe, she said sleepily. If she wants to. He ruffled her hair. We'll see, Peanut. But deep down he already had. The rain started around midnight. A soft tapping on the tent roof that slowly became a steady rhythm. Jason lay awake, arms wrapped protectively around Sophie, listening. He used to love rain. Before it meant leaks. Before it meant damp clothes and muddy shoes and a child shivering beside him. He shifted, trying not to wake her, and stared at the faint glow of the lantern outside the flap. His mind wouldn't stop. Every page of Olivia's proposal. Every word she'd said at the cafe. Every glance that lasted just a second too long. He thought about leaving again, packing up, moving to the next site, but even the idea made his stomach twist. Sophie had made a friend here, a memory, a drawing with 4 stick figures and uneven smiles. And he had unfinished business. By morning, the rain had passed. The ground squelched underfoot, but the sky had turned the color of a clean slate. Jason brewed instant coffee over the fire, the bitter smell grounding him like it always did. Sophie was still asleep when he saw her. Olivia. She didn't approach right away, just stood by the edge of the trail, like she wasn't sure if she'd be welcomed. Jason gestured toward the bench. No words. She came. Morning, she said. He nodded. You're early. I wanted to see the place like this. Wet. Real. Jason sipped his coffee. It's always real. They sat in silence. The birds were louder than either of them. Finally, Olivia turned to him. I lied. His head snapped around. I said I wasn't here to take anything from you, she continued. But that's not true. Jason narrowed his eyes. I want something, she said, voice trembling. I want to know her. I want to be part of her life. However you'll let me. He set down the mug. Live. I'm not saying I have a right, she rushed on. But when I saw her, Jason, she has your eyes, and her laugh. It's familiar in a way that makes my heart ache. He didn't speak. She's not mine, Olivia said, quieter now. But she's something I never thought I'd see. Something pure. And if there's any way I can be in her world without messing it up, I want to try. Jason rubbed his jaw, watching the smoke rise between them. You want to be in her life, he said at last. She nodded. But you're still leaving. Her shoulders dropped. I have meetings in the city. Deadlines. I thought I'd wrap things here by Friday. And after that? I don't know. Jason leaned back, exhaling hard. Then don't ask to be part of something unless you're ready to stay. She didn't flinch, just looked at him, eyes full of something raw and open. That's the thing, Jason. For the first time in years, I want to stay. I just don't know if I'm still allowed. A rustling behind them broke the tension. Sophie, still in her pajamas, hair a wild crown around her face, rubbing sleep from her eyes. You came back, she mumbled to Olivia. Olivia turned gently. I did. Sophie walked over and took her hand without hesitation. Jason's chest caved in a little. Can we show her the treehouse? Sophie asked. It's more like a pile of wood, Jason muttered. It's perfect, Olivia smiled. Lead the way. The treehouse was more ambition than structure. 2 pallets, some rope, and a lookout spot barely big enough for a small girl and a brave raccoon. But to Sophie, it was her castle. Jason watched them climb. Olivia held the rope with more confidence than he expected, laughing when a splinter caught her sweater. Sophie giggled the whole time, pointing out squirrel tracks and the place where the magic bird had landed yesterday. Something about the scene hit Jason in the ribs. This was the kind of morning he thought only other people had. People in movies. People who didn't carry years of mistakes and bruised dreams in their bones. When they came back down, Olivia was covered in leaves and dirt and smiling wider than she had in years. She's incredible, she said quietly. She is. I meant both of you. Jason looked at her, really looked, and for the first time the CO was gone. Just Liv remained. The girl who used to steal fries off his plate and fall asleep during documentaries she swore she loved. I'm sorry, he said suddenly. She blinked. For what? For leaving the way I did. Olivia shook her head. I was just as much to blame. Maybe, he said, but I should have fought harder. She touched his arm. You're fighting now. He didn't answer, because in his heart he wasn't sure if it was enough. That evening, Sophie insisted they all roast marshmallows again. Jason didn't say no. They sat closer this time. Jason on one side, Olivia on the other, Sophie between them like a tether. Her laughter floated into the night, soft and clear. Jason found himself watching Olivia when she wasn't looking. The curve of her smile. The way she tilted her head when listening to Sophie's wild stories. At some point, he stood to grab more wood. When he returned, Olivia was wrapped in the old blanket he usually kept for Sophie. Jason didn't say anything, just sat down again and let the warmth surround them. Do you still build things? Olivia asked softly. Not like I used to. I meant with your hands, not just fire pits and tents. Jason looked into the flames. I've been thinking about it again. She nudged his knee. Maybe you should. And he realized something. She wasn't just remembering him. She still believed in him. Maybe more than he believed in himself. Later, as Sophie fell asleep curled across both their laps, Jason whispered, She asked if you'd stay. Olivia ran her fingers through the girl's hair. What did you say? I didn't have an answer. And now, he looked at her, heart thudding. Now I want to ask you the same thing. Olivia didn't respond right away, but she didn't look away either. And in the silence, something settled between them. Not decided, not fixed, but real, and finally possible. 2 days later, she didn't leave. Not on Friday. Not the next morning. Her hotel room stayed empty while her suitcase sat untouched in the trunk of a borrowed car. She made excuses in emails, pushed meetings, told her assistant she needed time offline. And somehow no one questioned her. Because the version of Olivia Hart who answered calls in power suits had nothing on the version of her sitting barefoot on a log with a child in her lap and ash smudged on her cheek. Jason noticed. But he didn't say anything until Sunday morning, when Sophie came running into camp with a wrinkled flyer clutched in her hand. "Daddy, Liv, look, there's a town fair today, with music and popcorn and baby goats." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Baby goats?" "Yes, and a petting zoo, and face paint. Can we go?" He glanced at Olivia. She smiled softly. "It does sound local." Sophie was already packing her backpack, shouting instructions to her stuffed animals. So they went. The fairground was muddy from last week's rain, the banners slightly crooked, the music too loud, but it didn't matter. Sophie ran from booth to booth with wide eyes, dragging Jason and Olivia along like they were two halves of a balloon she refused to let go. Jason didn't remember the last time he laughed this much, or watched Olivia laugh so freely. He saw flashes of the girl she'd been and the woman she was now, folded into one. At the lemonade stand, she insisted on paying. At the hayride, she let Sophie steer the tractor wheel. And when the baby goats appeared, she dropped to the ground like a 5-year-old and let them climb into her lap without protest. Jason leaned against the fence, arms crossed, and just watched. She fit. Not like a puzzle piece, not perfect or expected, but like something that had been missing long enough for the edges to soften, the pain to dull. And now somehow she filled a space he hadn't realized was waiting. That evening they drove back in silence, the car windows cracked just enough to let the spring air drift in. Sophie fell asleep before they reached the main road. Jason parked near the tent and turned to Olivia. She looked at him, lit by the fading pink of the sky, and smiled. "She's happy. She's always been light," he said. "I just try not to block it." Olivia reached across the console, her fingers brushing his. "You never did." He looked down at their hands. "You could still go back, Liv. You've got a company. 100 people waiting." "They'll keep waiting," she whispered. "Because I've been running for years, Jason. I just didn't realize until I saw her. And me." She held his gaze. "You were always the place I stopped running." The words settled deep, warm, and terrifying. "I don't have much," he said. "You have everything," she answered. "You just don't wear it like a crown." Jason looked at her like he was memorizing a moment. "Stay," he said. "I already did." Over the next weeks, things shifted in small, beautiful ways. Olivia started helping with breakfasts. She taught Sophie how to braid her hair in executive knots, which really just meant uneven pigtails. Jason built a better roof for the treehouse and started drawing plans for something real, a tiny cabin made from reclaimed wood, just big enough for the three of them. A place with walls and windows, but still sky above them. He stopped worrying about leaving. He stopped pretending he wanted to. And then came the day when Sophie got sick. Not terribly, just a fever, a sore throat, a few days of exhaustion. But it hit Jason like a freight train. He hadn't felt that old fear in so long, the helplessness of watching her shiver, the panic of not knowing if it would get worse. He held her all night, Olivia on the other side of the bed, whispering stories and rubbing Sophie's back until the girl finally slept. When it was over, Jason broke. They sat outside while Sophie napped, and he stared at the fire pit, voice rough. "She's all I've got." "She's not all you have anymore," Olivia said gently. He turned to her. "That scares me more." "I know, but I still want more," he said. "I want a home. I want to stop drifting. I want to be the man she already thinks I am." "You are," Olivia said. "And I want to be the woman who never leaves again." He didn't kiss her then. But the way they looked at each other, it was the promise. The next week, Olivia filed a revision with her board. The Hart and Feldman project shifted course. The luxury cabins were replaced with small eco-dwellings and job training centers for locals. The land's new name would be Pine Bend Commons, a shared space for growth, for healing, for starting over. Jason signed the papers as its first official partner. Olivia moved into a real cabin nearby, but she slept more often under their shared roof. The tiny one Jason built from the blueprint he sketched with Sophie on his lap. And one spring morning, Sophie bounced into the kitchen holding a drawing with her usual pride. It had 3 figures again. One taller, one with long hair, and a heart between them. Jason picked her up, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You're pretty good at drawing the truth, huh?" She grinned. "You and Liv are the truth." Olivia watched from the doorway, coffee in hand, love written into the lines around her eyes. Jason met her gaze and smiled. They didn't need a wedding yet, or titles, or plans beyond breakfast. Because love, like fire, didn't need a match when the kindling was already there. And in the quiet woods where their story began again, 3 hearts burned bright, steady, warm, and finally home.
Bye, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.